2024 was a great year for me. I didn't get to play as many games as I wanted to, but the games I did play were really good. But the absolute highlight of my year was going with my friends to the Too Many Games Expo in Oaks, Pennsylvania. There were too many games, just to put it frankly. And not only did I get to meet creators I've looked up to for years, like Some Call Me Johnny, Ant Dude, Sam Procrastinates, Trav Guy, and not only did I get to meet some voice actors like Neil Newbin and Colleen O'Shaughnessy, but I finally got to meet some of my best friends for the first time in person. And no matter who else I met in those 3 days, that will always be the highlight of my year and one of the best weekends of my life. Alright, top 10 games time. Well, this was definitely a surprise. Marvel and Capcom have graced us with a re-release of the best of their fighting game crossover series. Children of the Atom, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. The main hitters are all here and accounted for. And all these games play great, and especially in Marvel 2's case, they're the definitive way to play, with customization features, training mode, and online play. All these games run really well and are the closest experience to the arcade originals on console that we've ever had. I personally have been playing a lot of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, whether on my Switch during my downtime at my job, or on Steam in 1v1s with some of my buddies. I'm not an expert on fighting games, so I can't really talk about any negatives for this collection, like, oh, they changed rogues down heavy, whatever. I can't really speak on that. The only reason I have it this low to begin with is because it is just a collection of older games, but it's a great collection of older games, and hopefully this collection's release is a sign of things to come, for both Capcom collections and for the greater Marvel vs. Capcom series. I didn't really mean for this to happen at all. Marvel Rivals was nowhere on my radar when it was announced because this just kind of looked like another hero shooter that seemed to be capitalizing off the success of Overwatch, but this time it was Marvel. The only reason I even considered playing the game was to play it with my buddy Jason. So we booted it up one afternoon. One session later, I was absolutely hooked. Marvel Rivals has everything that appealed to those who played Overwatch, and it's a functional game with actual thought and care put into it. Honestly, the only problems I have with the game are Jeff the Shark's ultimate, which I think has been addressed at this point, and for the love of God, can, the player base do our part and pick a healer from time to time? Good lord. The game has a massive roster with lots of unique characters, and while a few of them are archetypes we see in other games, like Adam Warlock is the Mercy, Punisher is your Soldier 76, Star-Lord's your Tracer, Hulk's kind of your Diva a little bit, but each character does have fun and unique gameplay. And while the game does have a battle pass system, it is not time sensitive, so you can buy it and then you can complete it at your own pace. And in a market where FOMO is still very prominent, that's something that's really refreshing to see. A few weeks ago, we got the launch of Sue Storm and Mr. Fantastic, and while Reed isn't really up my alley, I had a lot of fun with Susan's kit. I think I might have found my definitive healer. I think that the team has something truly special here, and I can't wait to see them add more well-known and obscure characters from the comics. If you like multiplayer hero games like Team Fortress 2, check out Marvel Rivals, and if you don't like it, well, you're not out any cash. This was by far the most frustrating game I played this year, and not because of any inherent problems with the game itself. At the time of writing this script, I'm 2 and 10. This game hates me. But I've still had a great time. Super Mario Party Jamboree is not only miles ahead of its predecessor, but may very well be one of the best games in the series. It takes the best aspects of Mario Party Superstars and Super Mario Party while cutting the unnecessary fluff from the latter. This game has some of the best boards we've had in a while, and having Mario's Rainbow Castle and Western Land back helps make this game feel a bit more complete. The minigames are mostly good, but many of the minigames that utilize motion controls don't really have that good of a reason to use motion controls. By far my favorite map is the Rainbow Galleria. The multiple floors and escalators combined with the stamps, it gives player an incentive to actually explore the map, and it makes it feel really fun. I've always found Mario Party to be more fun when everyone is getting screwed over, and the game is just full bent on doing that. There were so many times where an opponent would get 3 stars in a row because the spawn spaces were on the same path of each other, and if you add the gold pipe mixed with the Jamboree Buddy so you can buy 2 stars at once, do not be surprised if you want to skin the other players by the end of your turn. Are you fucking kidding me?
Are you fucking serious?
Nuh-uh. Nuh-uh.
Jamboree has the star placement of all time.
Most one-sided Mario Party I've ever seen. Are you fucking
Oh
kidding me?
my fucking god! Holy shit!
Christ.
Are you
fucking kidding?
Okay, no, Pat, maybe you're onto something. So maybe you're cooking, Pat. So maybe you're cooking. So maybe you're cooking. Jesus Christ. No,
I swear to God.
do not be. I think this board may just have shitty.
Are you fucking...
I think this board may just have shitty fucking star placement.
We
Oh
can't-
my
We strike him
God.
down and he only becomes
Guys.
stronger. This is bad. And as frustrating as it can be, I can't think of many other games that have gotten me to laugh so hard in my life. This Mario Party actually got me to play online with random people, which I gotta say the actual quality of the online isn't too bad. I don't have the world's best internet since I live out in the country, and I'm not really able to connect an Ethernet cord to my Switch like I'd want to, but any game that I've had with randoms or with friends have been mostly smooth experiences. I do hope the game gets some sort of update, maybe adding a new board, maybe some new minigames to keep things fresh, but we'll have to see on that. At this point in time, this is the only game on this list that I have not beaten to the end, and for that reason it's not any higher, but it was one that I had enough fun with to work in. Echoes of Wisdom was a game I was excited for, but I had my worries because of the ecosystem that it introduces. But after putting a lot of time into it, the biggest problem I have is how its menus work for selecting your echoes. It's the same system that's brought over from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and while earlier on it's quick and easy, the more echoes you get, it becomes more of a chore to select when you want to make an echo of something. And it breaks the pace big time when you're looking for one particular entity to spawn in and you just can't find it without sorting your menu like 5 times. Aside from that problem, the game is loaded with so much creativity, and it not only gives the player the sense of freedom that the Wild games give, but it also has a more linear structure to let the game tell a good story. I think they found a nice way to still have the traditional dungeon structure for a game like this, although I'm still waiting for them to try and reincorporate traditional items into things, but I can understand why they haven't yet. Exploring the world gave me a lot of reminders of playing A Link Between Worlds, as that game's world had a very similar kind of way of designing and structuring itself. And, you know, you have a lot of times where you're just pointing at the screen, you're like, oh, I know that thing, that's from Link to the Past, or that's from Link Between Worlds, or, oh, those are the things from that. This game will have you doing a lot of that, because it brings in aspects from almost every single mainline game, and you'll absolutely love it if you're as big of a Zelda fan as I am. But just be prepared for a stutter-filled experience. This game has some unbearable performance issues, and all it takes is spawning in a few echoes here and there, and bam, there you go. Now you're down to like 15 frames a second. It has kind of the same frame rate issues that the Link's Awakening remake had, the kind that I mentioned in my review, but honestly it's worse here. I think that this alone will warrant another playthrough on the Switch too, just to have an experience that isn't choppy. Stellar Blade was one of the 3 games I wanted to get a PS5 for, and while it didn't end up being the game I was expecting, I had a lot of fun with it anyway. I was kind of expecting more of a hack-and-slash game with the style of something like Bayonetta or Nier Automata, but instead I got a fun combo of Metal Gear Rising Revengeance and like a Soulsborne game. It was definitely a style I struggled with at first, but after like 10-20 minutes or so, I got the hang of it pretty quickly. Honestly, I didn't really care for the story, and while Eve, Adam, and Lily are fine enough characters, the story doesn't do anything super groundbreaking with them, but a particular moment later in the story for Lily bumped her up a bit for me. Stellar Blade really shines with its boss fights. There's like a special kind of dopamine that hits when I pull off a perfect parry against these guys, but at the same time, I think some of the groups of enemies you fight are harder than the bosses themselves, mostly because with the bosses at least you're only dealing with one target. I do wish the game had a bit more of these like linear sections where you're looking for the Alpha Natiba and exploring ruins and destroyed structures. I had the most fun in these areas to look for treasures and these pop cans and in the boss fights. Not to say that the rest of the game is bad or anything, but there were a few times I think the game's pacing can be pretty slow, and a few times where it can lose focus. However, I will say that this is a great base game to build upon for a better sequel sometime down the road, and I wish Shift Up the best for that new title whenever it starts development. More often than not, I tend to stay with the safe platformer franchises, you know, like Mario, Sonic, Crash Bandicoot, so on and so forth. But every so often, there's one outside of those franchises that I really enjoy, and Astro Bot falls into that category. I already was expecting at least some good game if Astro's Playroom was anything to go by, but this game blows that one out of the water. By all means, everything that this game does is stuff that you've seen before in other franchises, other platformers, and there's even some things that it's done in its previous game. But it's just so fun. Astro controls like a dream, and every single one of his power-ups don't feel intrusive whatsoever. And those power-ups lead to some of the best level design I've seen for a 3D platformer in a while. My highlight is, there's this house level where you get this like mouse power-up. You can shrink in size to get through these tiny pathways for secrets. And you go through like a little platforming section, and then when you have to shrink, there's just more fun platforming and exploration. By far my highlight, though, for this game is these cameo levels that are based around a specific Sony franchise. Even as someone who's never played like Ape Escape or Uncharted, or even someone who's never really finished Horizon Zero Dawn, I had a smile on my face going through these the whole time, because you could tell how much love and care that they put into these levels. But the best level in this game by far is the level based on God of War Ragnarok. I was giggling like a schoolgirl going through this level, catching all these little references and finding the robot Jormungandr, finding Odin's crows, and the music had me rolling with laughter and joy. And that'll be you if you're a big PlayStation fan when you play this game. I could recommend this to you on the fan service alone, but it's just a really solid 3D platformer that I think anybody should play. And this is the direction that Sony needs to turn their attention to. This was the first instance of me being spoiled this year. For those of you who don't know me very well, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door is one of, if not my favorite games of all time. And seeing that this game was getting a full-on remake with updated graphics and an orchestrated soundtrack, it was a dream come true. Not only was I going to get to experience my childhood all over again, but a new generation of kids get to play it for the first time. Comparing it to RPGs like Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger may make it not seem like much, but not only is it a perfect entry point for a newcomer to traditional RPGs, but it stands on its own as one of the best in the genre, and it takes you places that Mario's never really associated with. Go to a dark yet breathtaking forest with little bug people that live inside of a big tree. There's a gladiator arena suspended in the air where you fight a giant chicken, a murder mystery party on a luxury train ride, and you get launched out of a cannon to the moon and infiltrate a moon base filled with grunts and scientists. I could keep gushing about the base version of the game for like the next few minutes, but I'd rather gush about how faithful they were when they were remaking this project. It masterfully brings these iconic areas into the modern Paper Mario aesthetic damn near perfectly, and while the game is only running at 30 frames instead of 60 frames a second, it's just so pretty. There are a few critiques that I have. I think menu speed can be a bit slow, and as of now, there's not really any way to speed up the dialogue, but I think it's something I'm willing to overlook since I do love reading this game's dialogue. They added like these little Banjo-Kazooie noises the characters have when they speak. Pretty much every character has like their back sprites now, and a few tweaks have been made to the game's backtracking to make it a bit more bearable. Especially like in Twilight Town, they added a whole ass pipe that goes from Creepy Steeple back to Twilight Town, and it reduces your backtracking by like 20-30 minutes, which is fantastic. They've expanded on the blue warp pipe things that you could find in the original game, so now every single area in the game has one. So, like, you can easily get to Petal Meadows, Bogley Tree, Glitzville, Twilight Town. You can get to all these places super, super quickly. And it makes backtracking for side quests and main story quests so much easier. And the two new super bosses are great fun, and they made me yearn for more challenges with this battle system, especially thanks to the tweaks they made to the stage hazards. Story is great, I still love the characters and the partners. Thousand Year Door is still amazing, and as much as I would want to, I can't put it any higher than this, but surprisingly, even if I wanted to, this game wouldn't take the cake as my number one. I don't often play a Final Fantasy game, at least that's what I used to say. I've been getting more into the series in recent years with games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and 2023's Final Fantasy XVI. And another game I wanted to give a shot was Final Fantasy XIV. And man, you gotta get through some shit before things start getting good. You know, no disrespect to A Realm Reborn, but I think if I didn't have any of my friends with me to go through all that content, I don't think I would have gotten to the end of it. But this entry is specifically for Final Fantasy XIV's first expansion, Heavensward. There was a reason the meme was such a big thing. There was a reason the free trial used to go up to Heavensward, and there's a reason it's award-winning. Because this game is incredible. I was genuinely invested in the story and the characters. I loved exploring the world, and the dungeons and the bosses are so much better than base 14. Like, it's an understatement. I think my only big problems with Heaven's Ward as a whole is that the Aether Current collecting felt a bit tedious at times, especially in the first few areas, and the final boss against kind of easy. It was just a lot to take in over the course of the story, because part of the way through got and then turns into because they didn't take a fucking bath. Then I met and I was like, oh hey, how you doing there? And I talk in the language of Black Ops because this is a special story that I'd rather you not be spoiled for. If you could just get through base 14, you are in for a very magical experience. This entry I want to keep pretty short since I just put out a review for the game late last year, but everything that I said about Sonic X Shadow Generations is still true. It's still a great game that you should go play, and if you want more of my thoughts, then you can check my review out right here. But since then, the movie DLC is released, and you know, it's fine. The level's sort of linear in comparison to the ones in the base game, and there are a few moments where you're just kind of watching the stage transitions, and you can't even race on the stage in like the online ranking mode. And unlike Sonic Movie 3, which is by far the best movie of all time, and you should go watch it if you haven't watched it yet, Keanu's voice acting for Shadow here is a little bit to be desired. Like, it's not terrible, but it's not great either. Even this far after the release, I'm still going through the mainline stages in ranked mode, and Warbot is still giving me a run for my money, and I honestly wouldn't have it any other way. Before we get to number 1, I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of honorable mentions. I played a lot of Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the bus thanks to a neighbor kid when I was growing up, and finally getting to play the full game via the Switch remake was great. It is a very simple game, but one that I can have no problem picking up and playing. I did get a little too busy in 2024 to finish it, so that's another one on the list for me to finish. Speaking of, there's also Mario & Luigi Brothers Ship. The game is fun, but it's also frustrating to me, but it just edges out on being on that better side. The actual battle mechanics are really fun, and I did miss exploring areas like I did in the older games, but the game's early pacing is horrendous. Like, I'm pretty sure it's worse than games like Dream Team and Paper Jam, but once it gets going, it really gets going. One of my very late additions to my collection in 2024 is Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, and man, I wish I got to this sooner. It's like the same kind of bite-sized fun that I used to have with the old NES remix games on the Wii U and the 3DS. Like, I love the idea of speedrunning these NES games. Like, one of the hardest challenges was trying to get the mushroom in 1-1 in Super Mario Bros. As quick as you could, and I kept just getting an A rank. And I was just trying to keep shooting for the S and actually like working out like, okay, where do I have to jump? Where do I have to release the button? Where do I have to turn around Mario in midair in order to grab the mushroom? Like that was so fun. I had a lot of fun doing that. And I really hope that they do something like this with the SNES games sometime in the future. Hopefully for Switch too, but we'll have to see on that. This year I do have one dishonorable mention. I put Mortal Kombat 1 on my top 10 list last year, and I'm starting to regret it more with each day. While a few of my issues have been addressed, a lot of them are still very prevalent, and the Chaos Reign story expansion didn't help much either. The story literally could have just been an arcade ending, because it feels like the only reason it even happens is to make Sub-Zero noob Saibot, because God forbid characters go more than one game without an appearance. The inclusion of Cyrex and Sector is welcome, but the gender swap is just completely unnecessary. And aside from Ghostface, these guest characters aren't doing anything for me. Like, all this content is not worth $50. When the base game was released in the state that it was, and then you want to charge this much for a few chapters of a shitty story, some characters, and some skins, you either have a lot of confidence or you're as greedy as the executives from WB. I'm seriously praying that NetherRealm Studios is able to salvage whatever is left, because there is a great game buried underneath all this unnecessary bullshit that Warner Brothers is making them spew out. I guess we'll just see what the state of the game will be after the last few characters release, because I do like Mortal Kombat 1. Like, I love the mechanics of playing the game, but just everything else surrounding it, it's just not great. Have you ever had a game that you've played that just stays in your head long after the credits roll? For me, that was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I've tried rewriting this section of the script so many times, trying to find the best way I can express how much I love this game, and I still don't think I've been able to do it justice, even as I record this voiceover, but I'm going to do my best. And if you haven't played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth yet, go play it and then come back and watch this video, because I have a lot to gush about. This game was the follow-up to 7 Remake that I wanted, and then some. It fixed every single problem I had with the first game, and while there are a few issues I do have with Rebirth, they were extremely minor ones. I didn't think they could make the combat any better, but they managed to surprise me. Air combat is actually good now, and the new enemies give me just the right amount of challenges. I love the team up attacks that you can do with your characters. It's perfect. The open areas I have a lot of fun with. There's a lot to find and to do, and there was never a point in the game where I got bored. I will admit there was like maybe one or two too many mini games, but there are more great ones here compared to any bad ones. Although this one mini game in Cosmo Canyon can blow me. I fell in love with these characters in Remake, and it was great getting to be with them again. And the newcomers to the group make things feel like one big happy family. And I know to those who have played the original, this is nothing new, but as someone who hasn't fully beaten the original yet, which I am currently doing, there were multiple moments in the game I bawled my eyes out, and that was when I realized how invested I was into these game's characters. But where I believe Rebirth shines is the relationships that Cloud has with the other characters, and getting to see his growth was just a joy to behold. But my absolute favorite bits of the game was seeing the blossoming friendship between Cloud and Aerith, and the further developing love between Cloud and Tifa. The Gongaga chapter is the best chapter in the game, mainly because of these two dorks. And the dates of the Gold Saucer, oh my god, can I talk about the Gold Saucer for a second? I love how with each of these dates, it really shows how Cloud feels deep down about each person. With Aerith and Yuffie, he's being dragged along like a brother is by his sisters, but with Tifa, the two join hands and walk together at the same pace. And I don't think I didn't catch you smiling, Soldier Boy. And the second date, I think Barrett's is my favorite one because of the heart that these two have. But Tifa's? Oh my god, where is part 3? Where is part 3? Do yourself a favor, play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Just play it. You will have such a great time. And bring the tissues. Oh my god, bring the tissues. Which 2 this year? Let's fucking go!